Eleanor never meant for him to see it, the note tucked under his Audi's wiper blade. But when Matthew Hale read her anonymous words, everything changed. Was it too late to be seen and loved? Before we get into the story, comment below where, in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun hadn't yet broken over the sleepy coastal town of Seabreeze, Georgia, when Elena Brooks unlocked the back door of Sweet Dreams Bakery. At 28, she moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had been working since her teens. Her cocoa-brown skin glowed even in the dim light as she tied her apron and began preparing for the day. Another day, another dollar, she whispered. To herself, a saying her mother used to repeat before the illness took most of her energy. Elena's hands, slightly calloused from years of hard work, moved deftly as she prepared the morning's first batch of cinnamon rolls. They needed to be ready by 6:45 a.m. That's when he would arrive. Matthew Hale, the man in the sleek black car who never failed to pick up a cinnamon roll each morning. The man whose mere presence made Elena's heart beat faster, though she'd never admit it to anyone. The bell on the front door jingled as Darlene, the bakery's owner, walked in. "Morning, sunshine," Darlene called out, her voice cheerful despite the early hour. "Those rolls smell divine." "Just pulling them out now," Elena replied softly. Her voice was barely audible, a trait that had earned her the nickname Mouse among the locals. "You're a godsend, Elena. Don't know what I'd do without you." Darlene patted her shoulder. "How's your mama doing?" Elena's smile faltered slightly. "About the same. The new medication is expensive, but the doctor says it might help." "Well, you just let me know if you need anything, you hear?" Darlene said, already moving to set up the register. Elena nodded, grateful but uncomfortable with Charity. Between this job at the bakery and evening shifts at the Seaside Inn, she was barely keeping up with the bills. Her mother's multiple sclerosis had progressed faster than anyone expected, leaving Elena as the sole provider and caretaker. The clock struck 6:40 a.m. Elena felt the familiar flutter in her stomach. 5 more minutes. She watched through the window. As the black Audi pulled into the parking lot right on schedule, Matthew Hale stepped out, tall and impossibly handsome in his casual designer clothes. He had moved to Seabreeze 8 months ago, causing quite a stir in the small town. Rumors said he was some big shot from New York who'd made millions before turning 30. Others said he was running from something or someone. To Elena, he was simply the man who ordered a cinnamon roll each morning with a polite "thank you" and nothing more. Matthew entered the bakery, the bell announcing his arrival. As always, his eye scanned the room before landing on Elena behind the counter, and as always, he gave her a small nod. "Good morning," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The usual?" "Please," he replied, his deep voice sending a shiver down her spine. She carefully placed a cinnamon roll in a bag, her fingers trembling slightly. When she handed it to him, their fingers brushed, and Elena quickly pulled away. "Have a nice day," she said, not meeting his eyes. Matthew hesitated as if he wanted to say something more. But like every other morning, he simply nodded, paid, and left. Elena watched him walk back to his car. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a different life. One where she wasn't drowning in debt and responsibility. One where a man like Matthew Hale might actually see her as more than just the quiet bakery girl, but dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. That evening, Elena sat beside her mother's bed, reading aloud from a dog-eared romance novel. Sarah Brooks lay against the pillows, her once vibrant face now gaunt but still beautiful. "Elena, honey, you don't have to read to me every night," Sarah said, reaching for her daughter's hand. "You must be exhausted after working all day." "I like reading to you, Mama," Elena insisted, though her eyes were heavy with fatigue. Sarah studied her daughter's face. "You're working too hard. This isn't the life I wanted for you." "It's fine, Mama, really." "No, it's not fine. You're 28 years old, and what do you have to show for it? No social life, no—" "I have you," Eleanor interrupted gently. "And that's enough." Sarah sighed. "Dr. Roberts called today about—" That specialist in Atlanta. Elena tensed. She knew what was coming. "He thinks the treatment could really help, Elena. Slow the progression." "How much?" Elena asked, already dreading the answer. "20,000 for the initial treatment," Insurance won't cover experimental procedures. The number hit Elena like a physical blow. $20,000 might as well be 20 million. Even with both her jobs, she'd never save that much in time. "We'll figure something out," Eleanor said, forcing a smile. "We always do." Later that night, after her mother had fallen asleep, Eleanor sat at their small kitchen table and spread out the bills. The mortgage was 3 months behind, the electricity had a final notice, and now this specialist that could help her mother, completely out of reach. Elena put her head in her hands and allowed herself a rare moment of tears. Tomorrow she would be strong again, but tonight in the quiet of their small house she could admit the truth. She was drowning. As the tears subsided, Eleanor's eyes fell on her mother's stationery, delicate paper with a floral border. Sarah had always loved writing letters. A lost art, she called it. Almost without thinking, Elena picked up a pen and began to write. The words flowed from some deep, hidden place inside her. "If I could be anything more than invisible to you, I would. But this is safer. Still, I hope you have someone to love you the way you deserve. E." She stared at the words, surprised by her own honesty. She hadn't consciously been thinking of Matthew Hale when she wrote it, but she knew the truth. For months she had watched him, wondering about his story, imagining what his voice would sound like if he ever spoke more than a few words to her. It was pathetic, really. A silly crush on a man who barely noticed her existence. Elena folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. She would throw it away in the morning. Some feelings were better left unexpressed. The next day dawned grey and misty. Elena arrived at the bakery even earlier than usual, her mind heavy with decisions made during a sleepless night. She had called her aunt in Atlanta, accepting an offer made months ago. Her aunt had space for both Elena and her mother, and knew a nurse who could help with Sarah's care while Elena worked. It would mean leaving Seabreeze, the only home she'd ever known, but it would also mean better medical care for her mother. It was the right choice. The only choice, really. As Eleanor prepared the morning's baking, she felt the note in her pocket. She'd meant to throw it away, but something had stopped her. Now, in the quiet of the early morning, she made an impulsive decision. Matthew's car was already in the lot when she arrived. He must have parked it there overnight. Before she could change her mind, Elena slipped out the back door of the bakery and approached the sleek black Audi. With trembling fingers, she tucked the note under the windshield wiper. It wasn't really for him. Not exactly. It was for the idea of him. The dream of being seen, truly seen by someone like him. A dream she was about to leave behind forever. Elena hurried back inside, her heart pounding. It didn't matter. He would never know who wrote it, and by the end of the week, she would be gone. Matthew Hale sat in his home office, staring out at the ocean view that had drawn him to this small Georgia town 8 months ago. The peaceful scene was a far cry from the Manhattan skyscrapers he'd left behind, along with the cutthroat corporate world that had nearly destroyed him. His phone rang, his former business partner, no doubt calling to once again try to convince him to return to New York. "I'm not interested, Jack," Matthew answered without preamble. "You haven't even heard my offer," Jack replied, unfazed. "Don't need to. I'm happy here." Jack snorted. "Happy? You're hiding, Matt. From Rebecca, from your potential, from life itself." Matthew's jaw tightened at the mention of his ex-fiancée. Rebecca White, beautiful, sophisticated, and, as he'd discovered 2 weeks before their wedding, only interested in his bank account. "I'm not hiding, I'm living on my own terms. By buying a cinnamon roll from the same bakery every morning and then locking yourself away to brood. That's not living, my friend." Matthew frowned. "How do you know about the bakery?" "Small towns, big gossip. Seriously, Matt, it's been a year. Not every woman is Rebecca." After ending the call, Matthew couldn't shake Jack's words. Was he hiding? Had he really let one woman's betrayal turn him into a recluse? His mind drifted to the bakery and the quiet woman with the gentle eyes who served him each morning. There was something about her, a softness, a sadness perhaps, that had caught his attention from the first day. But he'd trained himself not to notice, not to engage. Walls were safer. The next morning, Matthew headed to the bakery as usual. As he approached his car, he noticed something tucked under the windshield wiper, a piece of paper fluttering in the breeze. Curious, he pulled it free and unfolded it. The handwriting was delicate, almost like calligraphy. If I could be anything more than invisible to you, I would. But this is safer. Still, I hope you have someone to love you the way you deserve. E. Matthew read the words once, twice, 3 times. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he'd thought long dead. Who was E? And how did they know exactly what he needed to hear? As he entered the bakery, his eyes immediately sought out the quiet woman behind the counter. Elena, her name tag read. Could it be? Had she written the note? No, that was impossible. They'd barely exchanged 10 words in 8 months. "Good morning," he said, his voice warmer than usual. "Good morning," Elena replied, her eyes widening, slightly at his tone. "The usual?" "Please," Matthew said, studying her face. Was there something different about her today? A sadness in her eyes he hadn't noticed before? As she handed him the bag, he made a decision. "I'm Matthew, by the way. I don't think I've properly introduced myself." Elena looked startled. "I know who you are," she said softly, then blushed. "I mean, everyone in town knows. And you're—" "Helena," he said, pointing to her name tag. She nodded, a flicker of something pain crossing her face. "Well, Elena, thank you for the cinnamon roll. You make the best in town." "Darlene's the baker, not me," she corrected, her voice barely audible. "Then thank you for brightening my morning," Matthew said, surprising himself. With his forwardness, Elena stared at him, confusion clear in her eyes. Before she could respond, the door opened and a crowd of tourists entered, ending their moment. Matthew left, the note burning a hole in his pocket. E. Elena. It had to be her. But why now? And what did she mean by safer? For the first time in months, Matthew felt something break through his carefully constructed walls, curiosity, and something else he wasn't ready to name. Elena watched Matthew leave, her heart racing. Why had he suddenly decided to talk to her today of all days? After months of silent transactions, why now when she was about to disappear from his life forever? The timing was cruel. "You okay, honey?" Darlene asked, noticing Elena's flushed face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Elena managed. "Just tired. Well, buck up. I need to talk to you about something important after the morning rush." 3 hours later, with the bakery momentarily empty, Darlene pulled Elena into the back room. "I've been doing some thinking," Darlene began. "I'm getting too old for these early mornings, been thinking about selling the place." Elena felt her stomach drop, another loss. But then I thought, why sell to a stranger when I have you? You've been the heart of this place for years, Elena. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you to take over. Not for free, mind you. We'll work out payments over time, but this place should be yours. Elena stared at her boss in shock. "Darlene, I can't. I'm leaving town. By the end of the week." Now it was Darlene's turn to look shocked. "Leaving? Where on earth are you going?" "Atlanta, my aunt lives there. It's better for my mother's treatment." Darlene frowned. "Is this about money? Because we can—" "It's about doing what's best for my mother," Elena interrupted gently. "I've made up my mind." As Elena walked home that evening, her thoughts in turmoil, she didn't notice the black Audi parked across the street, or the man inside watching her with newfound interest, a handwritten note carefully folded in his pocket. Elena reached her small house, her shoulders heavy with the weight of all she was leaving behind. As she opened the door, the phone was ringing. "Hello? Is this Elena Brooks?" a formal voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Dr. Morrison's office. We're calling about your mother, Sarah Brooks." Elena's heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "I just left her with the neighbor for a few hours while I worked." "Your mother is fine, Miss Brooks. I'm calling because an anonymous donor has covered the full cost of the specialist treatment in Atlanta, $20,000. You can schedule the first appointment as soon as next week." The phone slipped from Elena's fingers. $20,000. An anonymous donor. It wasn't possible. But as she stood in the doorway of her childhood home, one thought kept circling in her mind. Maybe she didn't have to leave Seabreeze after all. And maybe, just maybe, She wasn't as invisible as she thought. Elena sat in her small living room, staring at the phone she'd just hung up. $20,000. An anonymous donor. It didn't make sense. Who would do that? She whispered to the empty room. Her mind immediately went to Darlene, but the bakery owner couldn't possibly have that kind of money. Then she thought of Matthew Hale. But that was ridiculous. Why would a man who barely spoke to her pay for her mother's treatment? The front door opened, and Mrs. Jenkins, her elderly neighbor, helped Sarah inside. "Eleanor, what's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost," Sarah said, instantly concerned despite her own frailty. Elena rushed to help her mother to the couch. "Mama, something amazing has happened. The hospital called. Someone paid for the specialist treatment in Atlanta." "All of it?" Sarah's eyes widened. Who would do such a thing? They wouldn't say, just that it was anonymous. Mrs. Jenkins clapped her hands together. "It's a miracle. I've been praying for you two." After Mrs. Jenkins left, Sarah took her daughter's hand. "This changes things, doesn't it? We don't have to move to Atlanta now." Elena hesitated. "The treatment is still in Atlanta, Mama. We'd have to travel back and forth." "But we can stay in our home," Sarah insisted. "This is a sign, Elena. Something good is finally happening for us." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The mysterious donation consumed her thoughts. Part of her wanted to refuse it. Pride had always been her downfall, her mother said. But this was her mother's life. How could she say no? And then there was the note she'd left on Matthew's windshield. What had she been thinking? What if he somehow figured out it was from her? The next morning, Elena arrived at the bakery earlier than usual. The weight of her decision pressed on her. She'd decided to stay in Seabreeze, at least for now. She would tell Darlene today. As she prepared the morning's first batch of cinnamon rolls, the back door opened. Darlene wasn't due for another hour. "Hello?" Elena called out nervously. To her shock, Matthew Hale stepped into the kitchen. He was dressed casually in jeans and a simple blue button-down that made his eyes seem even more intense. "I'm sorry to barge in," he said quickly. "The front was locked, but I saw the light on." Eleanor stared at him, suddenly aware of her flower-covered apron and messy hair. "We're not open yet." "I know. I wanted to talk to you. Privately." Her heart began to race. The note. He knew. "About what?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Matthew reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her note. "About this." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "I don't know what that is." "I think you do," he said softly. "The handwriting matches your name tag. Elena. E." She turned away, busying herself with the dough. "I need to get these rolls ready. We open in 30 minutes. "Elena, please." "I haven't been able to stop thinking about this note. About what it means." "It doesn't mean anything," she said quickly. "It was a mistake." Matthew moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle. Was it really a mistake? Or was it a brave moment of honesty? Elena finally looked at him. His eyes held none of the judgment she'd feared, only curiosity and something else she couldn't quite name. "Why does it matter to you?" she asked. "Because for months I've come in here every day, and for months I've wanted to say more than thank you, but I couldn't. I wouldn't let myself." Elena's hands trembled. "Why not?" "Because the last time I trusted someone, she nearly destroyed me." The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. "But this note, it made me wonder if maybe I've been hiding too long." The timer on the oven beeped, breaking the moment. Elena stepped back, overwhelmed. "I have to work," she said, her voice barely audible. Matthew nodded. "I understand. But I'm not giving up, Elena. Not now that I know you see me too." After he left, Elena leaned against the counter, her heart pounding. What had just happened? And what did he mean? "Now that I know you see me too." The front bell jingled as Darlene arrived. "Morning, sunshine. Why, you're redder than a tomato. You feeling okay?" Elena nodded quickly. "Just hot from the ovens." "Well, I've got news that'll perk you right up. I talked to my nephew, he's a real estate agent. Says we can work out a rent-to-own deal for the bakery. That way you can take over without a big down payment." "Darlene, Now, before you say no, just think about it. Your mama's treatment is covered, and you've always loved this place. It's meant to be yours, Elena. Elena stared at her boss. How did you know about my mother's treatment? Darlene blinked. What treatment, honey? Someone anonymously donated $20,000 for my mother's specialist treatment. I only found out last night. Darlene's mouth fell open. Well, I'll be. That wasn't me, though. I wish I had that kind of money to give. Who do you think it was? Elena's mind went to Matthew and their strange encounter minutes ago. Could he have done it? But how would he even know about her mother? The morning rush began, and Elena pushed her questions aside. But at 6:45, when Matthew walked in, she couldn't help watching him more closely. He seemed different today, more present, his eyes seeking hers with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "Good morning, Elena," he said, emphasizing her name in a way that made it sound like a caress. "Good morning," she replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "The usual, please." As she handed him the bag, his fingers brushed against hers deliberately. "Have dinner with me tonight." It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a demand either. "I can't," she said automatically. "My mother." "I understand. Lunch then. Tomorrow." Eleanor hesitated. "Why?" Matthew smiled, and it transformed his usually serious face. "Because I want to know the woman behind the note, the real Elena." Before she could respond, he placed a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change. I'll see you tomorrow." As he walked out, Darlene appeared beside her. "Well, I never. Was that Matthew Hale asking you out?" Eleanor nodded, still stunned. "And are you going?" I don't know." Darlene put her hands on her hips. "What's there to know? He's handsome, rich, and clearly interested. And you've been making moon eyes at him for months." "I have not," Elena protested. "Honey, a blind man could see it. So what's holding you back?" Eleanor sighed. "Look at me, Darlene. I'm a bakery worker with a high school diploma and more debt than I can handle. Men like Matthew Hale don't end up with women like me." "That's nonsense. And you know it. Love doesn't check bank accounts." "It's not just that," Elena admitted. "I can't think about dating right now. My mother needs me." Darlene's expression softened. "Your mama would be the first one to tell you that you deserve happiness too." That evening, Eleanor sat by her mother's bed, reading as usual. But Sarah noticed her distraction. "What's on your mind, honey? You've read the same page 3 times. Elena closed the book. "Mama, do you think someone in town might have donated that money for your treatment?" Sarah considered this. "It's possible. People here have known us forever." "Why, do you ask?" Eleanor hesitated, then told her mother about Matthew's invitation. Sarah's face lit up. "The handsome man from the bakery asked you out? Eleanor, that's wonderful." "I told him I couldn't." "What, why on earth not?" "Because I have to take care of you, Mama. I don't have time for whatever this is." Sarah reached for her daughter's hand. "Elena Brooks, you listen to me. I did not raise you to put your life on hold for me. You go to that lunch tomorrow, but no buts. Shall be fine for a couple hours. Mrs. Jenkins can sit with me." Elena knew that tone. There was no arguing with her mother when she set her mind to something. The next day at the bakery, Elena was a bundle of nerves. She'd agreed to meet Matthew at the small seafood restaurant by the pier at 1 p.m. during her break. "You look beautiful," Darlene said approvingly, eyeing the simple blue dress Elena had changed into. "It's just lunch," Elena muttered, smoothing her hands over the fabric. "Mm-hmm. And I'm just a little old baker." Darlene winked. "Now go on. Don't keep your millionaire waiting." The restaurant was more upscale than Elena's usual haunts. She spotted Matthew immediately, sitting at a corner table overlooking the water. He stood when he saw her, and the smile that spread across his face made her knees weak. "So you came," he said, pulling out her chair. "I said I would," Elena replied, sitting down carefully. "I ordered champagne." "I hope that's okay." Elena shook her head. "Just water for me, please. I have to get back to work after this." Matthew nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "Thank you for coming, Elena. I know you're busy. About that note," she began, wanting to clear the air. "It wasn't meant for you to find, not really. But you left it on my car." "Yes, but..." Elena struggled to explain. I was planning to leave town. It was supposed to be a goodbye that you'd never know came from me, Matthew frowned. Leave town? Why? Elena hesitated, then decided on honesty. My mother is sick, multiple sclerosis. I was going to move us to Atlanta for better treatment options. But then someone anonymously donated the money for her treatment here. Something flickered in Matthew's eyes. That's quite a coincidence. Elena studied his face. Was it you? Did you donate that money? Matthew took a sip of water. Would it matter if I did? Of course it would. That's a huge amount of money. Why would you do that for a stranger? You're not a stranger, Elena. I've seen you every day for 8 months. Seeing. Someone isn't knowing them. Then let me know you, he said simply. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Eleanor picked at her salad, acutely aware of Matthew watching her. Tell me about yourself, he said finally. The real Eleanor Brooks, she laughed nervously. There's not much to tell. I've lived in Seabreeze my whole life, never went to college. I work at the bakery and the seaside inn. I take care of my mother, that's it. I don't believe that's it. What about your dreams? What does Elena Brooks want out of life? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in years. I used to want to open my own cafe, something small and cozy where people could feel at home. Matthew's eyes lit up. That sounds perfect for you. Darlene actually offered to sell me the bakery, Elena admitted, but I could never afford it. Why not? She gave him a look. Because I'm barely making ends meet as it is. What if you had help? Elena stiffened. I don't need charity. It's not charity to invest in someone with talent and vision. Before she could respond, a woman approached their table. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed, she looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Matthew, I thought that was you. Her voice was like honey, smooth and sweet. Matthew's face went rigid. Rebecca, what are you doing in Seabreeze? Visiting. A friend, she said vaguely, her eyes scanning Elena with barely concealed disdain. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? Matthew's jaw tightened. Rebecca White, this is Elena Brooks. Elena, Rebecca is an old acquaintance from New York. Rebecca laughed, a tinkling sound that somehow managed to be condescending. Is that what I am now? An old acquaintance? We were engaged, darling. Elena felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Engaged? Matthew had been engaged to this gorgeous woman. That was a long time ago, Matthew said coldly. Not that long, Rebecca countered, placing a manicured hand on his shoulder. We have so much to catch up on. I'm staying at the Blue Water Resort, room 302. Come find me when you're free. With that, she sauntered away, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. The silence at the table was deafening. Elena stood up abruptly. I should get back to work. Elena, wait. That wasn't... It's fine. She cut him off. Really? Thank you for lunch. She hurried out of the restaurant, ignoring Matthew calling her name. Outside, the bright sunshine felt like a mockery of the darkness spreading inside her. What had she been thinking? That a man like Matthew Hale could ever be interested in someone like her? Rebecca White was his type. Beautiful, sophisticated, from his world. Elena was just a momentary distraction, a small-town charity case. By the time she returned to the bakery, Elena had made up her mind. No more daydreaming, no more notes, no more Matthew Hale. But when she stepped inside, Darlene was waiting with a strange expression on her face. What's wrong? Eleanor asked. Your mother called. She said it's urgent. Eleanor's heart dropped. Is she okay? She's fine. But she said to tell you that someone just delivered an envelope to your house, an envelope with a contract inside. Darlene paused. A contract for the sale of the bakery to you for $1. Elena felt the room spin. What? There's more, Darlene continued. The contract came with a note. Your mother read it to me. She pulled out a piece of paper and read, To the woman who was never invisible. The bakery is yours, no strings attached. All I ask is one more chance. Famous Elena stared at Darlene, her mind reeling. Matthew bought the bakery for me? Looks that way, honey. But why? Darlene smiled gently. I think you know why. Elena thought of Rebecca, of her own doubts, of the note she'd written, in a moment of despair. And now this grand gesture, a dream handed to her on a silver platter. It was too much, too fast, too unbelievable. "I need to talk to him," she said finally. "He's waiting for you," Darlene replied, "at your house." Elena hurried out the door, her heart pounding with each step. Matthew Hale had just bought her a bakery. Her bakery. What did it mean? What did he want from her? And most importantly, could she trust this fairy tale to be real? Elena practically ran the 5 blocks from the bakery to her small bungalow. Her mind raced faster than her feet. Matthew had bought the bakery for her, for $1. It was too much to comprehend. As she rounded the corner onto Magnolia Street, she saw the sleek black Audi parked in front of her house. Matthew stood on the porch talking with her mother. They were laughing about something. The sight stopped Elena in her tracks. Her mother, who rarely had the energy to laugh these days, was smiling up at Matthew like they were old friends. Elena approached, slowly, suddenly uncertain. Matthew turned, sensing her presence, and the smile he gave her made her heart skip a beat. "Elena," he said, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. "What have you done?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah reached for her daughter's hand. "Elena, Mr. Hale has been explaining everything. Isn't it wonderful?" "Mama, can you give us a minute, please?" Sarah looked between them, understanding dawning on her face. "Of course, I'll be inside if you need me." She squeezed Matthew's arm before heading inside, leaving them alone on the porch. Elena crossed her arms over her chest. "You bought the bakery." "I did." "Why?" Matthew took a step toward her. "Because you love it. Because it's your dream." "You don't even know me," Elena insisted. "I know enough," he countered. "I know you work 2 jobs to support your mother. I know you put everyone else's needs before your own. I know you have the kindest eyes I've ever seen." Elena felt her resolve weakening. This is crazy. People don't just buy businesses for people. They barely know. Maybe not. But I'm not most people. Matthew reached for her hand, and to her surprise, Elena let him take it. "The money for your mother's treatment, that was me too." She had suspected as much, but hearing him confirm it sent a wave of conflicting emotions through her. "How did you even know about that?" "Small towns, big gossip," he said, echoing what he'd told her at lunch. "I overheard Darlene talking to you about your mother's condition months ago, and then recently about the specialist." "So what is this?" "Some kind of charitable project. Poor Elena needs saving." Matthew's expression grew serious. "That's not it at all. I didn't do this out of pity, Elena. I did it because—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because that note you left, it woke something in me. Something I thought was dead." Elena looked down at their joined hands. "I saw your ex-fiancée today. She's exactly the kind of woman I'd expect you to be with." "Rebecca?" Matthew laughed bitterly. "Rebecca loved my money, not me. 2 weeks before our wedding, I discovered she'd been cheating on me with my business partner. She only wanted the lifestyle I could provide." "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "Don't be. It taught me an important lesson about trust, which is why I've spent the last year hiding in this town, keeping everyone at arm's length." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. "Until you." "Matthew, I'm not asking for anything in return, Elena. The bakery is yours, no strings attached. The money for your mother's treatment, consider it a gift. No repayment necessary." "I can't accept that," she said, shaking her head. "It's too much. Then consider it a loan. Pay me back when you can, if it makes you feel better." Elena pulled her hand away gently. "Why are you really doing this?" Matthew was quiet for a long moment. "After Rebecca, I swore I'd never let anyone close again. I built walls around myself. But every morning when I came into that bakery, you were there with your quiet smile. You didn't try to impress me or get anything from me. You were just you. And somehow, without saying more than a few words, you made me feel seen in a way I haven't in years." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. "The note wasn't meant as a confession," she said quietly. "It was a goodbye. I know that now, but it became something else to me, a chance, a reason to tear down those walls. He took a deep breath. I want to know you, Elena Brooks. Really know you. Will you give me that chance? Before she could answer, the sound of tires on gravel interrupted them. A sleek convertible pulled up behind Matthew's Audi, and Rebecca White stepped out, looking like a model in her designer sunglasses and flowing summer dress. Matthew, darling, she called out. I've been looking everywhere for you. Matthew's expression hardened. What are you doing here, Rebecca? Rebecca sauntered up the walkway, eyeing Elena with barely concealed disdain. Your hotel said you'd gone out. The girl at the bakery told me where to find you. She glanced around at the modest house with a slight curl of her lip. Quaint little place. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, embarrassment mixed with anger. Can I help you with something? Rebecca ignored her, focusing on Matthew. I need to speak with you, privately. It's about the merger. Matthew frowned. What merger? Jack didn't tell you? North Star Capital is looking to acquire your technology division. It's a multi-million-dollar deal, Matt. They want you back in New York to oversee the transition. Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. New York, millions of dollars. This was Matthew's real world, not small-town bakeries and quiet women with sick mothers. I'm not interested, Matthew said firmly. Rebecca laughed. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you are. This is what you've worked for. No, it's what you and Jack worked for. I left that life behind for a reason. Rebecca stepped closer to him, placing a manicured hand on his chest. Come on, Matt. We both know you don't belong here. This little vacation from reality has been cute, but it's time to come home. Eleanor couldn't bear to watch anymore. I should check on my mother, she murmured, turning toward the door. Elena, wait, Matthew called after her, but she was already inside, closing the door behind her, heart pounding. Through the window, she could see Matthew arguing with Rebecca, his face tense with anger. Sarah was sitting in her favorite armchair, watching the scene unfold. Who's that woman? Matthew's ex-fiancée, Eleanor replied, sinking onto the couch. She wants him to go back to New York for some big business deal. And you think he'll go? Eleanor shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the ache in her chest. It's his world, Mama. Successful, beautiful people doing important things. Sarah studied her daughter. That young man doesn't strike me as someone who cares much for that world anymore. The way he looks at you. Don't, Elena pleaded. Don't make this into something it's not. And what is it exactly? I don't know. A week ago he barely spoke to me. Now he's buying bakeries and paying for medical treatments and saying things that make no sense. Sarah reached over to take her daughter's hand. Sometimes life moves in mysterious ways, Elena. Not every good thing comes with a hidden agenda. A knock at the door interrupted them. Eleanor hesitated, then went to answer it. Matthew stood alone on the porch, Rebecca and her convertible nowhere in sight. She's gone, he said simply. Back to New York? For now. But she'll be back. Rebecca doesn't give up easily when there's money involved. Eleanor leaned against the doorframe. Maybe you should consider her offer. It sounds important. Matthew shook his head. The only thing important to me right now is standing right here. The sincerity in his voice made Elena's heart skip. I don't understand you, Matthew Hale. A month ago, you wouldn't even look me in the eye. Now you're saying things like that. A month ago, I was still hiding. Your note changed everything. It was just a few lines scribbled in a moment of weakness. It was honesty, something rare in my experience. He hesitated. Have dinner with me tonight. Let me explain everything properly. Eleanor wanted to say yes. Every fiber of her being wanted to say yes. But the image of Rebecca's perfect face and confident manner kept flashing in her mind. I can't, she said softly. I need time to think, about the bakery, about everything. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. I understand. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't make any decisions about leaving town until we've had a chance to talk properly. Eleanor managed a small smile. I promise. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of her mother calling her name. She hurried to Sarah's bedroom, fear gripping her heart. What's wrong, Mama? Are you in pain? Sarah was sitting up in bed, a newspaper spread across her lap. Have you seen this? She asked, pointing to a headline. Elena took the paper, her eyes widening as she read, Local bakery changes hands. Millionaire Matthew Hale gifts business to longtime employee. Oh no, she groaned. How did they find out? Small towns, big gossip, Sarah quoted with a small smile. Your phone's been ringing off the hook, Darlene called. So did Mrs. Jenkins. Even Pastor Williams wanted to know if it was true. Eleanor sat heavily on the edge of the bed. What am I going to do, Mama? I can't accept this. Why not? Because Elena struggled to articulate her fears. Because people will think what Rebecca thought, that I'm just after his money. Sarah's expression softened. Since when do you care what people think? I don't. But this is different. Is it? Or are you just scared? Elena looked at her mother in surprise. Scared of what? Of being happy, of letting someone take care of you for a change. Sarah reached for her daughter's hand. Elena, you've spent so many years taking care of me, taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you. It's not that simple. It never is. But that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. Eleanor's phone rang again. The caller ID showed Darlene's name. With a sigh, she answered, Elena, thank goodness. Darlene's voice came through, breathless with excitement. Is it true? Did Matthew Hale really buy you the bakery? It's complicated. Elena replied, well, uncomplicate it and get down here. There's a line out the door. Everyone wants to congratulate you. What? Why? Because you're the talk of the town, honey. The shy bakery girl who caught the millionaire's eye. It's like something out of a movie. Eleanor groaned. I'll be there in 20 minutes. After helping her mother with breakfast and making sure she was comfortable, Eleanor headed to the bakery. True to Darlene's word, a small crowd had gathered outside. As Elena approached, several people clapped and called out congratulations. There she is, someone shouted. The new owner! Elena felt her face flame with embarrassment as she pushed through to the door. Inside, Darlene was handling the rush. With practiced efficiency. About time, she said when she spotted Elena. I can't keep up with this crowd. Everyone wants to hear the story straight from you. There is no story, Elena insisted, tying on her apron. That's not what the paper says, or what Rebecca White is telling anyone who'll listen over at the Blue Water Resort. Elena froze. What? Darlene lowered her voice. Jenny's cousin works at the resort. Says that fancy woman from New York is telling everyone that Matthew is just going through some kind of midlife crisis, that he's always had a thing for charity cases. The word stung more than Eleanor wanted to admit. Maybe she's right. Darlene's eyes flashed with anger. Now you listen to me, Elena Brooks. That woman is nothing but jealous. Matthew Hale looks at you like you hung the moon, and everyone with eyes can see it. Before Elena could respond, the bell over the door jingled. Matthew walked in, looking as handsome as ever in casual jeans and a light sweater. The bakery fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Morning, everyone, he said pleasantly, seemingly oblivious to the stares. His eyes found Eleanor's across the room. Can I talk to you for a minute? Privately. Darlene practically pushed her toward the back room. Go on, I'll handle things out here. In the kitchen, Matthew closed the door behind them. I'm sorry about the newspaper. Someone at Darlene's lawyer's office must have leaked the story. It's fine, Elena said, though it wasn't. But your ex-fiancé is apparently telling everyone, I'm your charity case. Matthew's expression darkened. Rebecca has always been spiteful when she doesn't get her way. I'll deal with her. No, don't. It'll just make things worse. Elena sighed. This is all happening so fast, Matthew. One day I'm invisible, the next I'm the center of town gossip. You were never invisible to me, he said softly. The words echoed her note so perfectly that Helena felt tears spring to her eyes. I don't know if I can do this. Do what? Accept the bakery. Accept whatever this is between us. Matthew stepped closer. Elena, I've spent the last year hiding from life. Your note, it woke me up, made me realize I can't keep punishing myself for Rebecca's actions. But why me? I'm nobody special. That's where you're wrong. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're the most special person I've ever met. The touch of his fingers against her cheek sent electricity through her. For a moment, Elena allowed herself to believe, in fairy tales, in happy endings, in the possibility that someone like Matthew could truly care for someone like her, the E. Kitchen door burst open, shattering the moment. Darlene stood there, her face pale. "Elena, honey, you need to come quick. It's your mother." Eleanor's heart dropped. "What happened?" Mrs. Jenkins just called. "Sarah collapsed. The ambulance is on its way to your house now." Eleanor was moving before Darlene finished speaking, tearing off her apron as she ran for the door. Matthew was right. Behind her. "My car's outside," he said. "I'll drive you." They reached Elena's house just as the paramedics were loading Sarah into the ambulance. Elena rushed to her mother's side, taking her hand. "Mama, can you hear me?" Sarah's eyes fluttered open, her face frighteningly pale. "Eleanor, what happened?" "You collapsed, Mrs. Brooks," one of the paramedics explained. "We're taking you to the hospital to run some tests." "I'm coming with you," Elena said firmly. As they prepared to leave, Matthew touched her shoulder. "I'll follow in my car." "You won't be alone, Elena." The ride to the hospital was a blur of fear and silent prayers. Eleanor held her mother's hand the entire way, watching the rise and fall of her chest as if her own breathing depended on it. At the hospital, the doctors whisked Sarah away for tests, leaving Elena alone in the waiting room. Matthew arrived minutes later, his face tight with concern. "Any news?" he asked, sitting beside her. Elena shook her head. "They're running tests. I don't understand what happened. She was fine this morning." Matthew took her hand, and this time Eleanor didn't pull away. She clung to his strength, grateful for his solid presence. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "I'm here." Hours passed with no word. Eleanor paced the waiting room, made calls to Darlene and Mrs. Jenkins, and prayed more fervently than she had in years. Finally, a doctor appeared. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Dr. Patel. Your mother is stable now." "What happened?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaking. "It appears she had a reaction to one of her new medications. It's not uncommon with the treatment she's starting. We've adjusted her dosage and she should be fine to go home tomorrow." Relief washed over Elena like a wave. "Can I see her?" "Of course. She's asking for you. Room 215. Elena turned to Matthew. "Thank you for staying. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he said simply. "Go to your mother. I'll be here when you're ready to go home." As Elena walked toward her mother's room, exhaustion and emotion threatened to overwhelm her. This day had been a roller coaster, from town gossip to medical emergency in the span of hours. But through it all, Matthew had been there, steady, supportive, asking nothing in return. Maybe, just maybe, her mother was right. Maybe it was time to let someone else be strong for a change. Maybe it was time to believe in something good. With that thought warming her heart, Eleanor pushed open the door to room 215, unaware that the biggest test of her faith in Matthew Hale was yet to come. Elena sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand as Sarah slept peacefully. The doctors had assured her that the reaction to the medication wasn't serious, but they wanted to keep her overnight for observation. A soft knock at the door made Elena look up. Matthew stood there, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. "Thank you." Elena took the cup gratefully. "You should go home, get some rest. Visiting hours will be over soon." Matthew sat in the chair beside her. "I'm not leaving unless you want me to." Elena studied his face, the concern in his eyes, the slight furrow of his brow. In just a few days, this man had turned her world upside down. Yet sitting here with him felt strangely right. "I spoke with Dr. Patel again," Matthew said quietly. "He mentioned that once your mother is stabilized on the new medication, she should be able to start the specialist treatment next week." Elena nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Because of you. I just provided the means. You're the one who's been taking care of her all these years." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Sarah sleep. Eventually, a nurse came in to inform them that visiting hours were over. "I'll be back first thing in the morning," Eleanor told her mother, though Sarah couldn't hear her. In the hospital parking lot, exhaustion hit Elena like a wave. The emotional roller coaster of the day had drained her completely. "Let me drive you home," Matthew offered, guiding her gently toward his car. Too tired to argue, Elena slid into the passenger seat of the Audi. The leather was soft and smelled expensive, reminding her of just how different their worlds were. "What are you thinking?" Matthew asked as they drove through the quiet streets of Seabreeze. I don't belong in this car, Elena replied honestly. Matthew glanced at her. You belong wherever you want to be, Elena. When they reached her house, Matthew insisted on walking her to the door. On the porch, Elena turned to face him. Thank you for everything. You don't need to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. No one has ever... She paused, struggling to find the words. No one has ever seen me the way you do. Matthew stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. And how is that? Like I matter. Without warning, Matthew leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, almost tentative, as if he was giving her the chance to pull away. But Elena didn't want to pull away. She leaned into the kiss, her heart racing. When they finally broke apart, Matthew rested his forehead against hers. You more than matter, Elena Brooks. You're everything. The words were so perfect, so exactly what she'd always wanted to hear, that Elena almost couldn't believe them. But standing there in the circle of his arms, she allowed herself to hope. I should go, Matthew said reluctantly. You need rest, but I'll pick you up tomorrow morning to go to the hospital. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. As she watched him drive away, her fingers touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of her phone ringing. It was Darlene. Eleanor, honey, you need to come to the bakery right away. I can't. Darlene, I'm going to the hospital to see my mother. It's important. There's a woman here saying she has legal papers about the bakery sale. Says she represents Matthew. Eleanor frowned. What woman? Some lawyer type from New York. Very fancy, very pushy. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Eleanor said, a knot forming in her stomach. She quickly got dressed and called Matthew, but the call went straight to voicemail. Strange. He had promised to pick her up for the hospital visit. When Elena arrived at the bakery, she found Darlene in a heated discussion with a severe-looking woman in a business suit. There she is, Darlene said with obvious relief. Elena, this is Ms. Porter. She says she's Matthew Hale's attorney. The woman extended a manicured hand. Vivian Porter, I represent Mr. Hale's business interests. Eleanor shook her hand cautiously. What's this about? Matthew didn't mention sending an attorney. Ms. Porter smiled thinly. I'm sure he didn't. May we speak privately? Darlene squeezed Elena's arm supportively before leaving them alone in the small office at the back of the bakery. Ms. Brooks, the attorney began, I'll be direct. The contract transferring ownership of this establishment to you is invalid. Elena blinked in surprise. Invalid? Why? Mr. Hale was not in his right mind when he signed it. We have reason to believe he's going through a personal crisis, making rash decisions that are not in his best financial interest. The words felt like a slap. That's not true. Matthew knew exactly what he was doing. Ms. Porter removed a document from her briefcase. Nevertheless, we need you to sign this. It nullifies the transfer and returns ownership to the original owner. Elena stared at the paper, her hands trembling slightly. I don't understand. Did Matthew send you here? Mr. Hale is on his way back to New York as we speak. He's reconsidered his position and realized the error of his judgment. The room seemed to spin. Matthew was going back to New York without even saying goodbye. I don't believe you, Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. I want to hear this from Matthew himself. Ms. Porter sighed impatiently. Ms. Brooks, I understand this is disappointing, but surely you didn't think a man of Mr. Hale's stature would actually give away a business to someone he barely knows. It was a momentary lapse, nothing more. The doubts that Eleanor had been fighting came rushing back. Hadn't she thought the same thing herself? That it was too good to be true? If you refuse to sign, we'll be forced to take legal action, Ms. Porter continued. Mr. Hale has considerable resources at his disposal. It would be in your best interest to cooperate. Before Elena could respond, the office door burst open. Rebecca White stood there, looking triumphant. Is she signing? Rebecca asked Ms. Porter. We were just discussing the terms, the attorney replied coolly. Elena looked between the two women, realization dawning. You're working together, Rebecca laughed. Of course we are. Did you really think Matthew would choose you over everything we built together in New York? Over me, Elena's heart hammered in her chest. "Where is Matthew? I want to speak with him." "He's gone, honey," Rebecca said with false sympathy. "Back to the real world, back to me." "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone. Has he called? Has he come to pick you up for your little hospital date like he promised?" Rebecca smirked. "Men like Matthew don't end up with women like you. That's just the way the world works." Eleanor felt sick. She hadn't heard from Matthew all morning. What if Rebecca was telling the truth? "Sign the papers, Ms. Brooks," Ms. Porter urged. "Save yourself the humiliation of a legal battle you can't win." Eleanor's hand moved toward the pen, her confidence shattered. Maybe this was for the best. Maybe she had been foolish to believe in fairy tales. Just as her fingers touched the pen, the bell above the bakery door jingled loudly, followed by the sound of raised voices. "Where is she?" Matthew's familiar voice demanded. Elena rushed out of the office to find Matthew standing in the middle of the bakery, looking furious. When he saw her, his expression softened immediately. "Eleanor," he breathed, moving toward her, "are you okay?" "What's going on?" she asked, confusion and relief washing over her in equal measure. "They said you went back to New York." Matthew's eyes darkened. "Who said that?" As if on cue, Rebecca and Ms. Porter emerged from the office. Rebecca's triumphant smile faltered at the sight of Matthew. "Matt," she stammered, "what are you doing here? You're supposed to be on your way to the meeting with North Star Capital." "Why would I be doing that, Rebecca?" Matthew's voice was dangerously calm. "I never agreed to that meeting." "But your attorney—" "Vivian hasn't been my attorney for months, not since I discovered she was helping you and Jack embezzle from my company." Ms. Porter paled. "That's a serious accusation, Matthew." "Yes, it is. One I can back up with evidence." Matthew turned to Elena. "I'm sorry I was late. My phone was stolen from my hotel room last night. I had to file a police report and get a new one." He glared at Rebecca. "Now I understand why." Rebecca's composed facade crumbled. "You're making a mistake, Matt. This nobody isn't worth throwing away everything we built." "You're wrong," Matthew said firmly. "Elena is worth everything, and what we built was nothing but lies." He turned to Ms. Porter. "Whatever papers you have are worthless. The bakery sale was completely legal, witnessed by Darlene's nephew, who happens to be a licensed attorney in the state of Georgia. Now I suggest you both leave before I call the police and report your attempted fraud." For a moment, Rebecca looked like she might argue further. Then, with a huff of indignation, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Ms. Porter following close behind. The bakery fell silent. Darlene, who had been watching from behind the counter, gave Eleanor a thumbs up before discreetly slipping into the kitchen, leaving them alone. "I'm sorry," Matthew said, taking Eleanor's hands in his. "I should have warned you about Rebecca. She's always been resourceful when it comes to getting what she wants." "She said you were going back to New York, back to her." Matthew shook his head. "Never. My life is here now." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "With you, if you'll have me." Elena looked up at him, still hardly daring to believe. "She almost convinced me. I almost signed those papers. Would you have? Given up the bakery?" "The bakery doesn't matter," Elena said softly. "I thought I'd lost you." The words hung between them, an admission more powerful than any note slipped under a windshield wiper. Matthew pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her as if he never intended to let go. "You could never lose me, Elena Brooks, not now that I've found you." 1 month later, Elena stood behind the counter of Sweet Dreams Bakery, her bakery, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up with a smile. Knowing exactly who it would be, Matthew walked in, handsome as ever in casual jeans and a light sweater. They had fallen into a new routine over the past weeks. He still came in every morning at 6:45, but now he stayed to help with the morning rush before heading to his home office to work on his new business venture, a foundation to help small business owners in rural communities. "Good morning," he said, leaning across the counter to kiss her. "How's the new baker working out?" Elena smiled. "Jimmy's a natural. Darlene trained him well." With the bakery now firmly in Elena's hands, Darlene had decided to enjoy her semi-retirement, coming in only a few days a week to help out and, as she put it, "make sure you young folks don't mess up my recipes." "And your mother?" How was she? This morning. Better every day, Elena replied. The treatment is working wonders. She's even talking about volunteering at the library next month. Matthew nodded, his eyes warm with affection. I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's heart skipped a beat. Matthew, it's not what you think, he said with a smile, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver key. At least not yet. A key to my house. Our house, if you want it to be. He took her hand. It's closer to the hospital for your mother's treatments, has plenty of room for her physical therapy equipment, and the best view of the ocean in town. Elena stared at the key, emotions welling up inside her. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking you to build a life with me, Elena, one step at a time. Matthew's eyes were serious now. I know it's fast, but when you know, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Elena thought of the note she'd written all those weeks ago, never expecting it to be read, never dreaming it would lead to this moment. How different her life had become since then. What if I'm still scared, she asked honestly. Then we'll be scared together, Matthew replied. But I promise you, Elena Brooks, you will never have to face anything alone again. Elena took the key, its weight solid and reassuring in her palm. Yes, she said simply. Matthew's face broke into a radiant smile. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in a joyful embrace that had the early morning customers applauding. Later that afternoon, as Eleanor told her mother about Matthew's offer, Sarah reached for her daughter's hand. You know, when your father left us, I thought I'd never trust again, Sarah said softly. But watching you with Matthew, seeing how he looks at you like you're the most precious thing in the world, it reminds me that sometimes love finds us when we least expect it. Eleanor smiled, thinking of the words she'd written on that torn piece of stationery. If I could be anything more than invisible to you, I would. But this is safer. Still, I hope you have someone to love you the way you deserve. She had written those words believing she would always be invisible, always in the background of her own life. Now standing in the sunlight of Matthew's love, Eleanor knew the truth. She had never been invisible to him, and she never would be again. As if summoned by her thoughts, her phone buzzed with a text message from Matthew. Dinner tonight at the Pier? I want to show you where we're going to watch sunsets for the next 50 years. Elena smiled as she typed her reply. I'll be there. And Matthew, thank you for seeing me. His response came instantly. Thank you for letting me. Elena tucked her phone away, her heart full to bursting. The bakery was thriving, her mother was healing, and the man she loved truly saw her for exactly who she was. Sometimes, she reflected, the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen. And sometimes, when you stop hiding, you find exactly what you've been looking for all along. The end. The